A U.S. Navy diver has been linked to more than half a dozen indecent assault cold cases dating back to the 1980s and 1990s. In 2024, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office Forensic Services Bureau oversaw the testing of 2 assault kits collected from assaults in 1982 and 1983 in Ventura, California. A few more home invasions assaults occurred in the following years in Okemos, Michigan in 1994, Birmingham, Michigan in 1995, and Columbus, Ohio in 1997. In March 2024, it was determined that DNA from the 1982 and 1983 Vento kits matched each other and matched profiles uploaded to CODIS. Although the same man was responsible for all those heinous acts, his identity still remained unknown. The district attorney's office said an investigative genealogist then worked with the suspect's DNA profile and ultimately identified Sean Patrick McNelt as the possible perpetrator. McNelt was born in Burlingame, California, and grew up in Ventura County, California. He graduated from Buena High School in 1977. In 1978, he had an early brush with the law in Ventura, where he was arrested for making obscene phone calls to women. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy and served as a diver from 1979 to 1992, a job that took him to multiple states and overseas postings. After his service, McNelt had traveled to or lived in the Philippines, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, and Virginia. He got married in 1988, but divorced his wife in 1997 and then took his own life in Michigan. This after becoming a suspect in a 1993 indecent assault case in Bloomington, Indiana. But to be sure, the investigators needed a sample of his DNA. During the investigation, a crime analyst with the FBI came across the 1993 indecent assault case in Bloomington, Indiana, where McNelt was the suspect. Bloomington investigators looked for evidence in the cold case and found a biological sample collected from McNelt. That sample was then compared to the 1997 assault in Columbus, Ohio, and matched. The results of the DNA testing were then compared to the California and Michigan cases and also determined to be a match. The Ventura County District Attorney's Office announced on September 4, 2025, following the decades-long investigation that McNelt was connected through DNA evidence to 2 unsolved home invasion indecent assault in Ventura, California in the early 80s, and 4 other home invasion indecent assaults in Michigan and Ohio in the 90s. The investigators tried to speak with McNelt's ex-wife to get a better understanding of his whereabouts throughout his life, but she refused to speak with them. McNelt will unfortunately not be prosecuted for these crimes because he is deceased. The investigator said that they attempted to locate McNelt's victims to notify them of his identification and demise. One of them told an investigator that she had waited 40 years to receive closure. The authorities believe that McNelt may have committed additional home invasion assaults and are asking for any information from other states and possibly even the Philippines. Individuals who have information regarding any crimes committed by McNelt are encouraged to contact District Attorney Investigator Yumi Kirk at 800-5477-1638. What began as an ordinary errand ended as a mystery that spanned almost a decade and a half. On the evening of December 21, 2010, 62-year-old Robert J. Long left his home in Miller Place, Long Island in New York, for what seemed to be a short trip. He told his wife that he was heading out to pick up something from a liquor store along Route 25A, a familiar route just over 3 miles from their house. He climbed into his silver 2007 Chrysler PT Cruiser and drove off. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. When Robert did not return home that night, his family grew concerned. Hours passed with no word, and by the next morning, panic began to set in. His phone went straight to voicemail, and the PT Cruiser was nowhere to be found. The following day, on December 22nd, his wife reported him missing to the Suffolk County Police Department. At first, the investigators searched the areas around Route 25A and the roads leading toward Cedar Beach and Mount Sinai Harbor. Helicopters and ground units scoured nearby wooded stretches and parking lots. The police issued missing person alerts while friends and family plastered Robert's photo on telephone poles and store windows. Weeks turned into months. There were no bank transactions, no phone activity, no sightings. It was as if Robert and his car had simply vanished. Some speculated that he may have suffered a medical emergency while driving. Others wondered whether his vehicle had somehow gone off the road unnoticed in the darkness. But with no physical evidence, the case slowly went cold. For the next 14 years, Robert's disappearance haunted his family and baffled the investigators. Each December, his wife and children renewed calls for answers, hoping some clue would surface. Then finally, a breakthrough. On June 30th, 2025, everything changed. A volunteer dive and sonar search group, explorers with a mission working alongside Adventures with Purpose, arrived in Mount Sinai, New York, to help search for unresolved Long Island missing person cases. They focus on locating cars and searching bodies of water near hometowns of missing individuals. The organization's divers use state-of-the-art sonar technology. Using the advanced sonar equipment, they scan the dark waters near the Cedar Beach boat ramp, a few miles from Robert's last known route. Within hours, the sonar revealed a vehicle outline beneath 17 to 20 ft of water, roughly 55 yd from shore. The divers entered the murky water and reached the submerged car covered in barnacles. When they brushed away layers of silt, the vehicle's make and color came into view. A silver Chrysler PT Cruiser. The license plate matched Robert's missing person file from 2010. Inside the car, the divers found skeletal remains. They immediately contacted the Suffolk County authorities. The area was sealed off as the detectives, crime scene investigators, and medical examiners began the delicate process of recovering the vehicle and remains. The divers think he entered the water during low tide, adding that the depth of the water changes significantly from high tide to low tide. Bill McIntosh of Exploring with a Mission said he literally drove down the boat ramp very slowly because the front end of that PT Cruiser, all of its plastic, all of its fenders were in perfect condition. The investigators found no signs of foul play, no evidence of another vehicle struggle or external interference. The most likely scenario was that Robert, possibly disoriented or fatigued, had accidentally driven off the road near the harbor and into the water late that December night in 2010. For years, Robert's family had been passing out flyers at Mount Sinai Harbor asking for help. They said it was among his favorite spots to feed seagulls. For the Long family, the discovery brought bittersweet closure. After years of uncertainty, they finally knew where he was. His wife, Joanne, told the divers that she checked the ramp multiple times. She said that she knew that he was there. She said on social media that she feels blessed that his remains have been found. She wrote, "Memories will resurface. It is a sigh of relief piggybacked by intense sadness. Having to face such a loss twice is not easy. This is how I feel, like I am dancing with birds in the darkness." His wife publicly thanked the volunteer dive teams for their work, saying they gave her family the peace they had been praying for since that night. When the PT Cruiser was finally pulled from Mount Sinai Harbor in 2025, it carried with it not only the remains of Robert, but the weight of 15 years of unanswered questions finally put to rest. It took 28 years for a victim of a brutal crime to see justice done. It was an autumn morning in Kennesaw, Georgia. On October 23, 1997, at a modest complex on Giles Road, a 27-year-old woman was preparing to start her day. As she opened the door about to leave her apartment, she was met by an unknown man. The man who stood there did not speak. In a flash, he lunged forward, throwing a jacket over her head and forcing her backward into the apartment. He slammed the door shut behind them. The intruder struck her, dragged her toward the bedroom, and began a brutal assault that lasted nearly an hour. When it was over, the attacker forced her to take a shower and wash her clothing, threatening to end her life if she called for help. Then, he disappeared. After the police was notified, the victim was taken to Kenston Hospital for an indecent assault kit exam. The police began what would become a 28-year search for a name. The case was complicated because the victim could not see the attacker and because of limitations in the testing of assault kits at the time. The Cobb County detectives processed the apartment carefully. At the time, DNA testing existed but was still in its infancy. The sample was carefully sealed, logged, and stored. Another entry in the long list of pending cases that the detectives hoped might one day be solved. Leads dried up and the case went cold. 2 decades later, in 2018, the case came alive again. The state of Georgia joined the Federal Assault Kit Initiative, which funded the testing of thousands of unprocessed assault kits nationwide. Among them was the one collected from the Kennesaw victim back in 1997. Technicians at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's crime lab analyzed the preserved biological evidence using new DNA technology. The results produced a clean male profile. When it was uploaded to CODIS, no immediate match appeared, but the profile stayed in the system. 2 years later, in 2020, more than 23 years after the attack, a hit notification came through. The DNA profile matched a man named Jerry Lee Pewitt, who was serving time in Alabama for an unrelated indecent assault conviction. The detectives learned that Pewitt had lived across several southern states in the late 1990s, often targeting women who lived alone. His attacks showed a pattern: early morning entries, forced confinement, and victims ordered to shower afterward, a deliberate attempt to erase forensic evidence. The investigators traveled to Alabama and obtained a fresh DNA swab from Pewitt. In 2023, forensic analysis confirmed it. The DNA from the 1997 Kennesaw assault kit belonged to Jerry Lee Pewitt. In September 2025, nearly 3 decades after the crime, Pewitt finally stood trial in Cobb County Superior Court. The 56-year-old defendant faced a long list of charges: indecent assault, aggravated sodomy, aggravated assault, kidnapping with bodily injury, burglary, and false imprisonment. The prosecutors presented the DNA evidence and described how modern testing linked Pewitt's profile to the decades-old kit. They also called other women from Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia who testified to being attacked in a similar manner. Their stories helped establish a pattern of behavior. A methodical, violent offender who stalked victims in apartment complexes near wooded areas. The victim of the 1997 case, now in her 50s, took the stand. She told the court how the memory of that morning had haunted her every day. She said, "I thought it would never be solved. For years, I prayed for this day. I am beyond thankful for this verdict and ready to turn the page of this chapter in my life. I carry the voices of so many who have not been heard, and I stand for them." After deliberating less than a day, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. Superior Court Judge Julie Jacobs sentenced him to 2 life sentences plus 20 years to run consecutively to his existing Alabama term. In the courtroom, the victim wept as the verdict was read. Cobb County District Attorney Sonia Allen said that the case was the first in the county to go to trial under the Assault Kit Initiative. She said, "This defendant is a predator of the worst kind, and I am so proud of Assistant District Attorney Julian Jordan and the Sackey team for bringing this case to trial." She added, "Justice was delayed in this case but delivered. It shows that time will not shield predators from accountability." The investigators believe that Pewitt may have committed other assaults between 1996 and 2000 in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. The authorities in those states are reviewing unsolved cases with similar details. A serial offender was finally linked to a decades-old unsolved cold case in Austin, Texas. Shortly before midnight on December 6, 1991, an Austin Police Patrol officer observed fire coming from the "I Can't Believe It's" yogurt shop located at 2949 West Anderson Lane and reported it to dispatch. The Austin Fire Department responded to the fire, and upon extinguishing it, the firefighters discovered the bodies of 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, and 13-year-old Amy Eyes. All 4 girls were nude, had been shot, bound, and gagged. Jennifer and Eliza were both employees at the shop. Sarah and Amy were in the store with them as they closed up for the evening. Due to the damage from the fire and water from the automatic sprinklers in the shop, evidence was difficult to collect. Austin Police Department Detective John Jones, now retired, processed the scene along with crime scene investigators and collected as much evidence as possible. The investigators have said that around closing time, someone was either in the store or entered through the back door, attacked the girls, and set the fire. They received thousands of tips and dozens of confessions, but most led nowhere. Within a week of the crime, 16-year-old Morris Pierce was arrested for bringing a gun to North Cross Mall. The gun happened to be the same make and model as one of the guns used in the yogurt shop. After hours of interrogation by Detective Hector Palano, now retired, he confessed to ending the lives of the 4 girls. The following morning, Detective Jones interviewed Pierce again, but realized his confession did not match the details of the crime scene. Additionally, ballistics analyzed the .22 gun that was seized from Pierce at the mall to determine if it was the same weapon used in the case, and the results were inconclusive. In 1999, the Yogurt Shop Task Force revisited the case and reviewed the original case files in further detail. The task force interrogated 4 subjects that had been identified as possibly being involved: Morris Pierce, Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, and Forrest Welborn. During the interrogations, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott confessed, and both implicated each other in the case. Forrest Welborn and Morris Pierce did not confess. At the time, the task force's theory was that Welborn waited outside in the car as the lookout. All 4 subjects were arrested for capital slaying in 1999. Scott and Springsteen were put on trial, and both were found guilty based on each other's confessions implicating one another. Scott received life without parole, and Springsteen received the end-of-life penalty. Wellborn was no billed, which means a decision was made by the grand jury not to indict him for the crime because there was not enough evidence to support a formal charge. The charges against Pierce were dropped. No physical evidence at the scene was ever linked to any of the subjects. In a shocking twist, it was discovered that Springsteen and Scott, whom served nearly 10 years in prison, could not have been involved thanks to new DNA technology. Their charges were dropped in 2009, and they walked free, but the case remained unsolved. In 2022, 23 years after the crime took place, Detective Daniel Jackson was assigned to the case. Detective Jackson met with several subject matter experts on DNA and genealogy, and a tiered list of items from the scene were identified for potential retesting. In June 2025, Detective Jackson determined that a .380 cartridge that was found in a drain at the scene had not been submitted for evidence. In July, they received a hit to an unsolved 1998 case in Kentucky. As the cases had similarities, Detective Jackson began working with the detectives in Kentucky to determine whether there were more similarities. In August, Detective Jackson requested a YSDR keyboard search from all labs in the U.S. that keep YSDR profiles. They found several labs hit on the manual search, but with only 16 to 17 markers out of the current 27 marker profile. The South Carolina State Lab was the only lab that found a complete 27 allele YSDR match to this unknown YSDR profile. The results were reviewed for accuracy by the South Carolina Legal Department before the profile was released to APD. On August 22, 2025, Detective Jackson received the South Carolina lab report that linked the yogurt shop unknown YSDR profile to a known YSDR profile from a 1990 Greenville, South Carolina indecent assault and slaying. The profile belongs to known serial offender Robert Eugene Brashers, born on March 13, 1958. Further testing is still occurring. Robert Eugene Brasher took his own life in 1999 during a standoff with the same make and model of weapon used to shoot Amy Eyes a .380 pistol. Detective Jackson also learned that on December 8, 1991, less than 48 hours after the yogurt shop incident, Brashers was stopped by Border Patrol at a westbound checkpoint between El Paso, Texas and Los Cruces, New Mexico. He was driving a stolen car out of Georgia and was in possession of a .380 pistol. It was confirmed that this is the same gun he used to shoot himself with in 1999, as the serial numbers match. The gun found on Brashers that day was confiscated, but it was eventually returned to his father, who may have given it back to him. For almost 34 years, the detectives have continued to work this investigation and have never given up on solving this case for the families of Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Eyes. Detective Jackson said Amy's final moments on this earth were to solve this case for us. It is because of her fighting back. The police said that Brashers could be a suspect in other unsolved cases. The little girl in the barrel that was found in Allenstown, New Hampshire, has finally been identified after decades, but a new mystery remains. In November 1985, hunters discovered a 55-gallon steel drum in Bear Brook State Park containing the remains of a woman and a young child. That discovery began what would be called the Bear Brook investigation. With no clues to their identities and little evidence to follow, the case eventually went cold. In June 2000, 15 years later, a New Hampshire state trooper revisiting the scene made a chilling discovery. They found a second barrel in the same area containing the remains of 2 more young girls. The investigators believed that all 4 victims were connected and had been in the woods the entire time, just waiting to be found. DNA testing confirmed that the woman was biologically related to 2 of the young girls, but their connection to the 3rd child, who became known as the middle child, remained unknown. In 2008, another 8 years later, the state police turned to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for help identifying the Bear Brook victims. In addition to providing forensic resources such as DNA testing and advanced analytical support, NCM elevated the cases nationally, creating numerous facial reconstructions, missing posters, and driving widespread media outreach. After a decade, in 2018, a tip helped point to the identities of 3 of the 4 victims. And in 2019, advanced testing and genetic genealogy confirmed them as Marlis Honeyurch and her two young daughters, Marie Vaughn and Sarah McWaters. According to the police, Marlis was last seen in California around November 1978 when she introduced her family to her new boyfriend, Terry Rasmussen. After that, the family never saw Marlis or the girls again, and Rasmussen became the primary suspect in their case. The investigators focused their investigation on Terry Rasmussen. They still wanted to identify the remaining girl named the Jane Allentown Doe 2000. Known for using multiple aliases, Rasmussen moved frequently across the country, and wherever he went, people seemed to vanish. The investigators later linked him to a series of crimes, missing persons and unidentified victims stretching from New Hampshire to California. Because of his ability to reinvent himself and avoid detection, he became known as the chameleon perpetrator. Rasmussen was eventually linked to violent crimes and was convicted in 2003 for ending the life of his girlfriend, 45-year-old Yoon Jun, a chemist in 2003 in California. By then, he was suspected of several other cases, some still unsolved to this day. He confessed to dismembering Unsoon after he married her in a backyard ceremony. Her cousin Ella Ramos once said that she felt a chill come over her the first time she met Rasmussen. She said, "I could not even reach out my hand to shake his hand. He was the creepiest person ever." At the time, Rasmussen was going by the name Larry Vanner. He is also believed to have used the aliases Curtis Keimel and Gordon Jensen. NCMECH and the investigators pursued leads on the third child's identity. Advanced DNA testing by Estria Forensics pointed to genetic genealogy as the best path forward. Firebird Forensics worked on the case for another 5 years until 2024, when New Hampshire State Police partnered with DNA Doe Project, who uncovered a crucial lead, a possible mother to the child, a woman named Pepper Reed. Pepper was last seen by her family in Texas during Christmas of 1975. At the time, she was pregnant. According to the family, the child's father was Rasmussen. However, after Christmas, the family said that Pepper moved to California. They never met the child or saw Pepper again. Quickly after identifying Pepper as the possible mother, DNA Doe Project made another discovery: a birth record from Orange County, California for a baby girl born in 1976 named Rhea Rasmussen. The birth certificate listed Rhea's parents as Terry Rasmussen and Pepper Reed. Confirmation that this was the lead that the investigators had been searching for all along. Pepper had one surviving sibling, a brother who was believed to be the uncle of Jane Allen, Stan Doe 2000. In September 2025, DNA testing with Bode technology funded by NCMX Child Justice Project grant confirmed the identity that the investigators had been searching for. Jane Allentown 2000 was Rhea Rasmussen. The investigators said that Rhea was born in Orange County, California in 1976. At the time of her demise, Rhea was between 2 and 4 years old. Unfortunately, there are no known photographs of Rhea, so the investigators are continuing to use NCMEC's facial reconstruction to provide the most accurate visual of what Rhea may have looked like. While serving his sentence for ending the life of his girlfriend, Yoon Rasmussen passed away in prison in 2010. Carol Schweitzer, program manager of NCMEC's Forensic Services Division, said, "For 25 years, Rhea's story has been defined by tragedy rather than her name. This moment reflects years of persistence, innovation, and collaboration across agencies who never gave up hope." She added, "Today, we can finally speak Rhea's name and provide long-awaited answers to her family and the community who has loved her." With Rhea's name restored, the investigators have another mystery to solve. What happened to Rhea's mother, Pepper Reed? Pepper, who has been missing since the late 1970s, is considered a possible victim of Rasmussen. The police are looking for any information on the whereabouts and fate of Pepper. The investigators are also looking for any information on Terry Rasmussen's movements between 1974 and 1985, particularly in New Hampshire, California, Arizona, Texas, Oregon, and Virginia. If you have any information on Terry Pepper, or please, contact the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit at 80,050-2555 or 6,030,2,712,663.